Orindora is a support mage. A group of people approaches him, and it seems this trio doesn't like him very much. Orin guesses they've come to discuss an issue related to the upcoming expedition, and he just wants to tell them he's busy with work for it. However, the arrogant trio announces that he has been kicked out of the party as of today. A man named Oliver Cardiff, who holds the rank of Holy Sword, informs Orin that this is a serious matter and that he has been removed from the party without his consent. Orin loses his temper and asks for the reason behind their attitude. He reminds them that they were once childhood friends and comrades in battle. Oliver replies that's precisely why he let him join the party in the first place. They came from the same village. And Oliver says that from now on, things will be too difficult for Orin. Oliver decides to be blunt with his old friend, saying that, simply put, he isn't skilled enough. Orin is completely stunned by those words. Orin stands there silently as his childhood friend asks him to leave the party without causing any trouble. A short flashback reveals that 8 years ago, when they were just 10 years old, Orin and Oliver formed a party. This party quickly gained everyone's attention and came to be called the Hero Party. They continuously achieved many significant accomplishments, such as in the Southern Great Labyrinth, where no one had ever reached the final floor. Orin and Oliver's party were the first to conquer up to the 94th floor. They were an extremely talented party, reaching S rank just a few years after forming. Back in the present, Orin asks why his skills are the only ones being targeted. He asks Oliver why he isn't saying the same thing to all the other members of the party. Orin tries to make Oliver understand that blaming each other will get them nowhere, but Oliver cuts him off, saying that for a long time, the whole party didn't realize the importance of a support magic user, especially an enchanter like Orin. However, during the dragon raid last month, the party realized just how wrong they were about Orin's role. Oliver continues, as if driving the final nail into Orin's anger, that after comparing him with other S-rank support mages, Orin's support magic is far inferior to theirs. Orin bows his head, clenching his fists at this betrayal, and reminds the group that he was originally a swordsman, so of course he would lack skills and fall behind them. Before Orin could say anything about creating his own magic, Derek Mosley, the Guardian, cuts him off and tells him to stop whining. Derek points at Orin and yells that the reason Orin switched to being a support mage was because his sword skills couldn't compare to Oliver's. Derek gets closer, aggressively saying that even as a support mage, Orin isn't good enough, so he has no right to complain. Orin remains calm and reminds them that the party was lacking a support member, and that's precisely why he was chosen, because he had the highest aptitude to make the switch. He confidently declares that thanks to his personal spells, he compensated for his weaknesses, and because of that, the whole party survived deep within the labyrinth. Unfortunately, Oliver completely ignores Orin's words and declares that they are the hero party and are ready to move on without him, as they have already found a replacement support mage. Oliver adds that although he feels sorry for how things turned out, there was no other choice. Orin's vision slowly darkens as he stands silently, wondering why they would be willing to treat a comrade they had fought alongside for so long so terribly. In the end, he just thinks that he is a redundant existence and admits that he no longer has a place here. Orin thanks the party for everything and says he will leave without bothering them anymore. Without a shred of shame, Anali Wild, a mage in the party, scoffs that although Orin can use both magic and swordsmanship, his skill level is only mediocre. She found it annoying that Orin always questioned everything they did and sarcastically takes one last jab at him before he leaves, calling him a master of none. She advises Orin to find something that suits him better. Orin looks back with a dark expression, thinking about how he had always given his all for the party, yet this is what they thought of him the entire time. As he opens the door for the last time, Orin wonders why he ever tried to join a party like this. The next day, he wakes up late and realizes he overslept. After being abandoned the day before, he had been depressed all day. Now, Orin decides to stop thinking about what happened. and pushes away the negative thoughts, considering how to make a living. He thinks of three options. One is that he could continue his work exploring dungeons, gathering materials, and selling them. The second option is that he could work somewhere, where the income might be less but more stable. The third option is to open a shop and earn a lot of money, but it also comes with a high risk of failure. In the end, he concludes that of the three options, it's best to continue as he was. He doesn't want to become rich, as his goal in coming to the city was to become an adventurer. He came here with Oliver, but not to follow him. He decides he will go back to being a swordsman. It seems a dungeon has opened recently, and he decides he will train there. The guild staffer asks him if he's going alone, and he wonders if there's a problem with that. She informs him that while there's no issue rule-wise, going into a dungeon alone is very dangerous, so he should join a party. He thanks her for the warning and asks if she has looked closely at his guild card. She hands him his guild card, and when she realizes he has reached level 94, she is stunned, her mouth hanging open. She confusedly apologizes for her rude behavior and allows him to enter the dungeon. The sudden change in her attitude surprises Oren as well. He enters the first floor and encounters a horned rabbit. He smiles, realizing that this monster is perfect for practice. With a dull blade, he easily cuts the creature down and notes that it was an easy victory. Perhaps his skills hadn't dulled as much as he thought since coming to this dungeon. He decides to go deeper to continue his training. Step by step, he reaches the third floor and notices the number of monsters gradually increasing. But the monsters here have rather low intelligence. He thinks that maybe he should try using support magic. Support magic is a type of magic often used to enhance the body or increase the effectiveness of weapons, not just for party members, as mages can also strengthen themselves. He activates a strength support spell. Support spells are very convenient, however, they still have one weakness. It's about time. The effects of magic don't last forever. Depending on a person's magic resistance, the duration of the effect will change. In your case, the effect lasts for 180 seconds, so you only have 3 seconds left to deal with the remaining monsters. Support magic users are always in a race against time. Oren realized he had developed a new fighting style, a combination of a swordsman and a support mage. He had a new resolve. He wanted to grow to the point where no one would call him a jack of all trades, master of none anymore, but rather a master of all. Finally, Oren reached the 7th floor and decided to stop. He saved his progress at the teleportation crystal, which allows users to teleport to saved floors. While he was doing this, he overheard another group arguing. They were criticizing someone for leaving a girl behind as bait and running away. The person tried to justify it, saying he did the right thing. The moment Oren heard that part, he froze. Oren was shocked to hear the culprit explain that there were more monsters than they expected. So instead of leaving the old members behind, he decided to abandon the newcomer. This reminded Oren of the moment he was abandoned. He could somewhat sympathize with the victim in the situation, but also blame the girl for choosing such teammates. However, when he thought about the fact that she could die, he broke his silence. Finally, Oren turned around and stared at the group, calling them a bunch of whining kids. He asked why they weren't going back to save the girl instead of standing here complaining. Without hesitation, he said that he hated their type of people the most. The culprit raised his fist, screaming that he was left there all alone. So how could he possibly save her? Oren easily dodged the punch and sent the guy flying into the air with clear anger. He asked the group members for the girl's location, causing sweat to run down their faces. The 3 group members immediately revealed the victim's location. Right after that, Oren disappeared in a flash to go save the girl. Oren vanished into the labyrinth, while the helpless girl was surrounded by giant monsters from all sides. She tried to put up a defensive barrier and prayed that someone would come to save her before the protective magic collapsed. Oren rushed forward at full speed, declaring that those who abandon their comrades don't deserve to form a party. The girl kept calling her older sister's name, hoping she would come to the rescue. Suddenly, a blast of airshock magic sent all the orcs flying. Oren had arrived to save the day. He gently told the girl to just focus on maintaining her barrier and to leave everything else to him. Meanwhile, she wondered if Oren was a mage or a swordsman. Oren used support magic to enhance his strength, skill, and the sharpness of his sword. The girl stared in astonishment as she realized the swordsman could also use support magic. Oren estimated there were about 13 orcs around. Seeing their strength, he remarked that it was understandable why a low-level party would run from such an opponent. Oren remarked that it was understandable for a low-level party to flee from such strong opponents, but he could easily handle them alone. With a single slash, he wiped them all out. Afterwards, he turned back to ask the girl if she was okay, smiling while using healing magic on her. The girl burst into tears, confessing that she had been scared to death. Oren gently patted her head, knowing she felt that way because her comrades had abandoned her. Afterwards, she thanked him, and they both left upon hearing more monsters approaching. When they reached the exit of the labyrinth, the girl introduced herself as Sophia Claude. Oren seemed to recognize the name when he saw the emblem on her clothes. Sophia offered to treat Oren to dinner to express her gratitude. She said she couldn't cook, so they would have to go to a restaurant. Oren blushed a little and hesitated at first, but eventually agreed. He asked if she had chosen a place yet, and if not, he could recommend a few restaurants. The conversation started smoothly. The rabbit symbol on her shirt indicated she belonged to a large explorer family called the Silver Rabbit of the Night Sky. A family is an organization of explorers who sell and process materials that adventurers bring back from the labyrinth. Sometimes they also open restaurants and general stores, like this one. The profits from the store are used to equip their members. It seems Sophia's family had the largest number of adventurers. However, what Oren didn't understand was why Sophia had to join a regular party. She took Oren to a client's restaurant where he recognized the girl Sophia called her older sister. The girl scolded Sophia for having a boyfriend at such a young age, then turned to Oren and said it had been a long time. Her name was Selma Claude, and she was the leader of an S-rank party. She was famous not only for her beauty but also for being the strongest among support mages. Selma's skills put her on par with Oliver's hero party. In fact, she was the very reason Oren had been kicked out. Oren's power as a support mage had been compared to Selma's by Oliver. It seems Selma was the one who had introduced the concept of roles to the party members, including roles like attacker, defender, and rear support. Oren had been forced to switch to being a support mage and was always considered inferior to Selma. However, he didn't understand why Selma was looking at him like that. It seemed she misunderstood and thought he had bad intentions toward her little sister. Oren didn't have to explain himself because Sophia did it for him, calling him the one who saved her. However, this only put Sophia in a tougher spot as she was scolded for sneaking into the dungeon alone. Afterward, she apologized to Oren, and now he understood why a member of a famous family like Sophia would join a regular adventuring party. Oren asked to sit down because people were starting to look at him like a criminal. He realized they hadn't had a proper conversation since the joint battle last month, when Selma was the leader and he was just the support mage. When Sophia asked Selma how she knew Oren, Selma told her little sister that Oren used to be in the hero's party. Sophia suddenly cried out in surprise and immediately became serious when talking to Oren, avoiding looking directly at him. She heard him say that he was no longer a member of the hero's party because he had left yesterday. Sophia couldn't believe Oren could leave so easily without any opposition from Oliver. Oren explained that it was due to his personal circumstances and that they had both agreed on the decision. Sophia then asked Oren if he was free and that she wanted to ask him for a favor. Oren misunderstood the situation and assumed she wanted to recruit him into her family, so he refused. Someone else corrected him, saying that Sophia actually wanted to invite him to a joint expedition happening the day after tomorrow. Sophia revealed that this was a new plan by the Silver Rabbit of the Night Sky family, where a number of rookies would climb to the 51st floor of the southern dungeon in 3 days, led by a veteran adventurer. Oren asked why she was participating in such a dangerous schedule, since it normally takes 6 to 12 months to clear, no matter how good the rookies are. Sophia admitted the plan was risky, but if they followed the shortest path exactly, it wasn't impossible. She also mentioned that they were working like there was no tomorrow due to pressure from their sponsors. For the sponsors to insist on such a reckless plan, there must be some other secret reason. Oren told her he knew that if the rookies could get past the boss floor without fighting, it would help strengthen the family. Someone in the group's eyes widened in surprise, realizing Oren had to do so much just from her words. They started to realize he was smarter than they thought. Normally, a boss appears on every 10th floor, and the rookies have to defeat it to advance to the next one. Many rookies often die in these boss fights. But if the veteran fighters can distract the boss while the rookies sneak past and register at the teleportation crystal at the entrance, they can advance without facing the boss. And Oren asked why Selma would be willing to reveal such important details to an outsider like him. This took Oren completely by surprise. She told him that she held him in high regard. And that was something she realized during their previous collaboration. Oren wondered why he felt so happy just because Selma valued him. If he accepted the offer, he would have to go back to being a support mage. So, Oren told Selma that he had his own plans. However, Sophia pleaded with him to join her, giving him puppy dog eyes. Oren thought for a moment, and he agreed, but he had one condition. He told her that while she might value him as a support mage, he had switched to being a swordsman. Therefore, he was only willing to join as a swordsman. Oren was quite firm about this condition and refused to compromise. Selma agreed to his condition and invited him to the clan's headquarters at 8 p.m. after dinner. After the meal, Oren gave Sophia money to pay for dinner. She concluded that he was truly a kind and strong person. However, Selma didn't approve of the direction Sophia's feelings for Oren were heading. Selma reminded her sister that, compared to him, she was in no way inferior in terms of kindness and strength. The two sisters bickered playfully, and Selma thought about how to deal with the party that had abandoned Sophia. They arrived at the clan headquarters. Selma considered that she should focus on those who would be participating in the joint expedition. She entered Captain Vince Briarth's room and reported two new things. First, she said that Oren had left the heroes' party. Vince remarked that without Oren, the heroes' party wouldn't be able to fight at their full potential. He also praised the speed of Oren's magic activation, adding that it was 4 times faster than his own. Vince also highly valued Oren's spells. Selma added that Oren's ability to assess a battle was also exceptionally brilliant. He also had all the necessary skills for an enhancer. The second thing Selma reported to Vince was about her invitation to Oren. Vince commented that he had no problem with it, but wondered why Selma was so interested in Oren. He asked if she was planning to add Oren to Team 1 to replace someone important who had left. The only problem was Oren's condition of wanting to be a swordsman. Their clan seemed to be in decline. Meanwhile, Oren met up with someone close to him. He finally broke down in tears, releasing his tension. Oren had a dream in which he recalled old memories of playing and sword fighting with Oliver. He was always the weaker one. And because of that, Oliver had to bear the expectations from his superiors. There was a girl named Jan who was always by Oren's side. He woke up from the dream, but couldn't remember who that girl was. Oren stepped into the entrance of the southern dungeon, looking around with a slight sense of wonder. Sophia and Selma approached from behind and said good morning. Oren also returned the greeting in a friendly manner. At the same time, he noticed Sophia looked different than usual. He wondered if it was because of her new uniform. Oren complimented her, saying the outfit suited her well, making Sophia blush and thank him, while Selma watched her with a curious gaze. Selma asked Oren with a hint of annoyance if he was good at flirting, or if he was involved in any romantic relationships. Oren calmly replied that when he was a member of the heroes' party, he was used to living with other members, so it was nothing strange. Selma then felt embarrassed for misunderstanding and mentioned that all the heroes used to live together in a mansion. Sophia asked about Oren's current living situation, and he replied that he was renting a room at an inn. He had also thought about buying a new house, but was still hesitant. Selma teased Sophia, asking if she wanted to live with Oren, which made the situation quite amusing. Sophia denied it and insisted she was just curious, while Selma was also picking up on some confusing signals from them. Everyone wondered why Oren was standing so far away, and he explained that as an outsider, he didn't want to make them uncomfortable. Selma then suggested he should join them to help ease the rookies' tension. Oren agreed and moved closer to the group. Recalling last night's meeting, Oren explained that he had gone to the headquarters as agreed and met Captain Vince, receiving the details of the expedition from Selma. In short, the expedition would last for 3 days, exploring from the 1st to the 51st floor of the Southern Great Labyrinth, including outdoor camping so the rookies could adapt upon reaching certain floors. There would be 10 rookie groups participating, with each leader responsible for 2 teams and 5 guides, including Selma and Oren, supervising the entire group. Oren realized that something big was happening at the Silver Rabbit of the Night Sky headquarters as they prepared for battle with monsters. The groups would take turns fighting, and if any unexpected incidents occurred, the guides would have to handle them. Selma explained that each guide was expected to handle such situations. As they talked, she asked Oren if he had any questions about the plan. He wondered if just 5 guides would be enough. Selma replied that although the goal was to lead the rookies to the 51st floor, a certain amount of risk would help them grow. However, Oren felt they weren't sharing the entire plan with him. Accepting the situation, he agreed to cooperate and move forward. Selma mentioned the payment was 2 gold coins up front and 10 upon completion of the mission. He found the rate very generous and realized she valued him highly. Who wouldn't want to join a mission with a reward like that? The next day, he noticed the captain's silence, still skeptical about the mission. Oren greeted the 3 people before him. He introduced himself as one of the guides, a frontline warrior. Upon asking about their roles and checking the formation, he learned the group included 2 defenders, Onsliman and Arnold, along with a healer named Kathy. Oren wondered if there was something more to this formation. Tony expressed his confidence in the group. For the next 4 days, their goal was to guide and welcome the rookies according to the mission's arrangement. Despite noticing some oddities, Oren agreed to cooperate, hoping to overcome the challenges he would face. In the morning, Oren greeted everyone with a friendly hello, and Selma reminded them of the plan. The challenging journey to the 51st floor of the dungeon began today. A sense of anxiety filled the air, visible on everyone's faces. To confront their fears head-on, Selma reassured them that unexpected challenges had been accounted for and that they had a powerful ally. Selma introduced their trump card, Oren, who had reached the 94th floor of the dungeon, a feat that even they had not yet achieved. This surprising revelation caused the crowd to react with admiration and whispers, while Oren listened to the story of his history with the hero party, which painted him as a dungeon expert. The crowd was astonished, and questions began to arise. Oren seemed to dislike this excessive attention. A confident voice from the crowd called out, asking if this new assurance could get them to the 51st floor. A consensus spread, and Selma declared the start of the expedition, prompting cheers that boosted the group's morale. As they gathered, instructions to stay with the team were called out. Oren asked if her earlier encouragement was a bit too enthusiastic, and Selma admitted that his reputation from the hero party had fueled her words. Even so, she asserted that guiding the rookies was her role. Oren nodded, recognizing his responsibility for Squad 9 and Squad 10. The focus shifted to the rookies, promising talents, especially Squad 10. Oren wondered to himself if he was capable enough to lead such potential. Their exchange continued, Selma's trust in Oren evident as he stepped into his responsibility. Oren introduced himself and promised to lead them for the next 3 days. Warm smiles and polite greetings were his reply, making Oren feel humbled by the respect they showed him. Inwardly, Oren marveled at this reception, perhaps as a reward for his past with the hero party. Sophia from Squad 10 caught Oren's attention. as she gathered everyone and recorded their names and roles. Oren made sure everyone was present, confirming the unity of Squad 10's formation with a three-person group, a rare configuration. Oren recognized this rarity and knew that having fewer members would increase the risk, especially since they were rookies. A voice cut in, expressing doubt about Oren's seemingly reckless attitude. He was taken aback by the skepticism, yet he sensed promising potential. Worries about the future echoed in his mind as they stood together, preparing for the journey to the waiting 51st floor. Oren felt relieved that the whole group had gathered without any issues. He nodded in agreement and suggested everyone start with introductions. One by one, they shared. First was Logan Hayward, the commander of Squad 10, who took on the role of a support mage. Logan spoke with unshakable confidence, declaring his ambition to surpass even Selma in the coming days. Oren couldn't help but be surprised by Logan's audacity, but then signaled for the next person. Coraline Ingloud, the defender, intrigued Oren as she chose to wear light armor, despite her defensive role. Coraline explained that she focused on an evasion strategy, aiming to deal with magical creatures at close range and take them down as quickly as possible. Oren pondered this strategy, wondering if evasion was wiser than a direct confrontation. Last was Sophia Claude, who held the rare dual roles of attacker and mage. Her simple introduction unexpectedly made Oren feel more at ease. Amidst the diverse personalities of the team members, he began to reassess the complexity of the mission. He felt there would be more challenges ahead than he had initially judged. The joint expedition officially began. The rookies grew quieter than their initial excitement upon entering the dungeon. Coraline from Squad 10 wondered why a member of the hero party was joining them. From the hero's perspective, they wouldn't even be considered rivals. Oren asked her if she hadn't heard Selma's explanation. He made it clear that he was no longer a member of the hero party. They were always cautious about the activities of the silver rabbit of the night sky. Coraline wondered why he would leave the hero party when they were so admired. It was everyone's ultimate goal. Oren brushed off Coraline's probing questions, explaining that he wasn't comfortable with such interactions. He said it had nothing to do with her, which made Coraline suspect he was hiding something, as Oren's tone sounded quite suspicious. Coraline then mentioned Sophia, asking if Oren knew her. Oren confirmed his connection to Sophia, and Coraline went on to say that Sophia always praised an outstanding individual who would be joining their mission. Sophia confirmed this, mentioning that Oren had saved her life in the past. Coraline had also heard about Oren's strength and that he used to be part of the hero party. Oren wondered if this conversation was meant to ease Sophia's tension, but his thoughts were cut short by the roar of two dangerous wolves. Oren observed that the traps had worked effectively, causing the wolves to react. These traps were designed to activate over time, and their success proved the team's skill in setting them. These traps are hard to detect once set and can eliminate pursuers without much effort, saving energy for more important battles. No time would be wasted on these meaningless fights. As they reached the 20th floor of the dungeon, Coraline asked Oren about their progress. He estimated they had about 10 minutes left if they maintained their current pace, which surprised Coraline, and Oren believed they could finish sooner than expected. Oren realized that they were actually a good team. He observed that the group was initially somewhat skeptical of the trio. Logan, who was once thought to be an arrogant rookie, had shown the skills of an impressive enhancement mage. If Logan could endure prolonged battles, he could easily fit into the group flexibly and was clearly a genius. However, his weakness lay in his role as an enhancer, as his guidance abilities were still weak. Nevertheless, his strength would grow as he gained more combat experience. Next was Coraline. She aspired to be a swift defender, but despite her impressive speed, two flaws held her back. First, she had a tendency to rush into battle recklessly. And although close combat suited a defender's role, this approach worried Oren. Second, her use of two daggers, while fitting for Coraline's individual skills, didn't mesh well with the group's tactics. Finally, there was Sophia, She seemed weaker than the other two, but her skills were far beyond a rookie's level. Although hesitation was still an issue, Oren thought that more interaction with the group could help her overcome this weakness. Oren watched Sophia very carefully, and her potential for growth greatly intrigued him. As for the Night Squadron, there was still much room for improvement. After successfully defeating the boss together, the team leader ordered them to stop. Oren thought, "We'll end it here for today." Someone had underestimated the influence of the night. Summer directed the three of them to head to the 21st floor and register their cards there. At the end of the day, they said in unison, "Yes, ma'am." Selma acknowledged Oren's efforts, and he replied curtly, "You too, Selma." She asked about the rookies, and Oren commented on Team 9's progress, while Team 10 had performed exceptionally. However, he pointed out a lack of coordination, especially with Carolyn. Selma chuckled, remarking that although Carolyn ranked third, she had come a long way from her former self. They said their goodbyes and wished each other a good night. The next day, the sun rose. Oren's anxiety became more apparent as he read a newspaper. The front page revealed that the replacement of chanter Oren Dura from the Hero Party had become public. Oliver, the party leader, confirmed that Oren's poor magic skills were the main reason for the replacement. Oliver admitted it. They were unaware of the limits of Oren's abilities in this area. Yet the party still achieved the unprecedented feat of conquering up to the 94th floor of the dungeon. Despite the disappointment, the addition of Philly Carpenter, a renowned adventurer active in the Great Western Dungeon and known as one of the continent's best support mages, on par with Selma Claude, brought a new wave of hope to the Hero Party. Oren felt frustrated. He had hoped the news of Philly's arrival wouldn't get out until after their joint mission was complete. He was worried about the Hero Party and the potential change in the rookie's perception, especially Logan from Team 10. Oren suspected that Logan's pride might prevent him from following orders after learning this information. Oren also thought that not all the rookies would read the article, but those who did might change their opinion of him. Even Oren himself felt curious about the current situation, but he had to accept the circumstances. As Oren headed to the meeting point, a familiar voice called his name. Runa, a healer from the Hero Party, remarked that it had been a while since they had seen each other at the meeting 4 days ago. Oren admitted that, but revealed that when he was in the party, Runa was the only one who treated him well. Her absence during his expulsion left him with lingering regret. Runa pleaded with Oren to reconsider returning to the party, stressing that they needed his skills. Oren could feel her appreciation for him, but he wondered if this was the wish of the entire party. Runa clarified that this plea was from her personally, and that she would try to convince everyone else if Oren agreed. Oren's expression turned serious as he questioned the sincerity of Runa's offer, but she insisted she hadn't read the article that caused the rift. She recalled their promise to conquer the Great Dungeon together, which included Oliver, the one who had led to her departure. She believed that promise had lost its meaning, a sentiment Oren quietly absorbed. He had hoped they still trusted each other more than that. He realized that dragging this out would only cause more trouble, so he apologized and walked away, leaving a disappointed Runa behind. Oren admitted that even if he wanted to move on and keep his promise, he couldn't go back. There was no place for him anymore. Sadness was clear on his face as he confronted the reality that it was too late, and everything had changed since that fateful day. Amid the whispers and hushed conversations, the fallout from the article had captured the crowd's attention. Oren stood among them, wondering how many people would lose faith in him after reading about his expulsion. The article claimed that Oren Dura, once part of the renowned Hero Party, had been kicked out for being unskilled. Perhaps he was wishing he had trained harder. Amid the surrounding discussions, a question hung in the air. Was Oren really expelled for his incompetence? Oren greeted everyone with a simple good morning, a stark contrast to the excitement he had inspired the day before. Clearly, confusion filled the air. The poor guy, he must be so nervous now. Selma spoke up with an apologetic tone, even though she had nothing to be sorry for. She was so sweet. She realized that if Oren's panic continued, their joint exploration could fall apart. despite his efforts to lift everyone's spirits. The current situation required caution. Selma's unnecessary apologies stemmed from her belief in supporting Oren, even though she wasn't deeply involved in the matter. Oren brushed off her concern, insisting that he would eventually overcome this hurdle. He took responsibility for not revealing the truth sooner, a choice that had inadvertently caused trouble for Selma. He reassured her that he would still contribute to the expedition's success, so she could focus on her usual duties. Selma agreed, placing her trust in Oren's words. As the two exchanged assurances, the atmosphere gradually lightened. The meeting of Teams 9 and 10 was approaching, and greetings were exchanged with a renewed sense of camaraderie. Once the group had gathered, Oren decided it was time to confess the truth. He admitted that the article was mostly true. He had been removed from the party for being deemed incapable. At least he was being honest with his comrades. Oren expressed his regret for not revealing this sooner. Just then, Sophia stepped forward, her voice unwavering, and came to Oren's defense, recalling how he had swiftly defeated countless enemies. It seems someone has a crush. Sophia firmly believed that his abilities were anything but lacking. Oren was grateful for her steadfast support. He elaborated, clarifying that his strength didn't lie in traditional heroic abilities, but in his mastery of swordsmanship. Oren declared that, despite no longer being a member of the hero party, he could still lead them to the 51st floor of the dungeon. He pledged to dedicate himself to protecting the entire group as Orendura, a hero in his own right. His call to action mirrored the spirit of the previous day, encouraging them to give it their all just as they had before. As they continued their journey to the 3rd floor of the Yasa dungeon, their teamwork and determination blossomed. The members of the Night Squad fought bravely against the monsters, and Oren's heart swelled with pride as he saw their trust being rebuilt. Leading by example, he shared guidance, grateful that the heavy tension had lifted. The Night Squad had proven that theory alone wasn't enough. Success also required trust. Hopefully, nothing stupid would happen to break that trust. Finally, the morning's tension gave way to unity. Through these trials, Aaron's journey continued with new resolve, his comrades' support pushing him forward. The presence of dangerous creatures loomed ahead, leading to a simple question from the leader. Is Team 10 ready? A unanimous yes echoed back with unshakable determination. The team moved forward, and Oren gave a slight nod. Coraline directed him to distract the goblins, while Logan used support magic to enhance her power. Sophia took on the task of eliminating the orcs hiding in the back. Logan's magical prowess particularly caught Oren's attention. His ability to cast 3 support spells at once was unlike that of a rookie, although Logan displayed impressive skill. Coraline still charged into the fight recklessly. However, the real challenge came from Sophia, who was still haunted by the orcs' attack from a few days ago. Just as Oren had predicted, fear caused her to freeze, trapped in a state of panic. Gently, he tried to coax her out of this internal storm, telling her to calm down and reminding her of the camaraderie they shared. The team was her safety net, Coraline, Logan, and himself. Sophia was no longer alone, and this realization gave her strength. Oren's encouragement ignited a fire within Sophia. No longer bound by the ghosts of her past, she summoned her strength and unleashed high-level magic. Her power erupted, creating a chaotic vortex, so intense that even Oren was taken by surprise. It was a testament to her growth and resilience. Coraline's excited cheers and the team's embrace reflected everyone's pride and relief. Sophia's success was met with widespread praise. The next battle, though arduous, tested their resolve. Despite the difficulties, they reached their destination, the 36th floor. Selma, the team's leader, congratulated the group on their achievement, praising their relentless efforts. Tomorrow would be the final day of the expedition, and Selma advised everyone to rest and recharge to be in peak condition for the final battle. As the group dispersed, Oren was stopped by Bernard and Ansem, the guides from Night Sky Silver Rabbit. They invited him to dinner, a rare invitation. Grateful, Oren realized they weren't judging him based on that controversial article. and a wave of gratitude washed over him as he accepted their offer. As they chatted, the conversation eventually turned to Sophia. Logan curiously asked if Sophia knew Oren. She confirmed they had only met recently. She recounted how Oren had saved her 3 days ago, deep within the dungeon. The conversation shifted to the perilous situation they had faced, shedding light on the details of that fateful encounter. The day's trials had revealed the team's strength and cohesion as they prepared for the final push. Their camaraderie had become their strongest weapon, reinforcing their unity with every challenging step. But now they were driven by a common goal, propelling them toward the end, hoping no one would give up at this stage. Logan, curious, asked Sophia if she could elaborate on how Oren had saved her. With curious eyes, he wanted her to recount every detail. Sophia seemed confused about what he meant by details. Logan explained that he wanted to know about the type of magic Oren used and his fighting style. When Logan asked if she remembered what happened clearly, her expression revealed that, at that moment, the fear of death was the only thing on her mind. Sophia tried her best to recall and said that Oren had used a spell that created immense wind pressure. She thought it was called Shockwave. However, that alone wasn't enough to satisfy Logan's curiosity, so he pressed her for more. When Sophia remembered that Oren had used support magic to enhance his sword, Logan's eyes widened in astonishment. Logan asked Sophia to confirm if he'd heard correctly that Oren used a sword. Sophia explained that Oren had used a sword to quickly take down all the orcs. Logan mulled over this new information. The fact that Oren could not only use magic, but also fight with a sword intrigued him immensely. Sophia added that, although she wasn't sure about Oren's circumstances, she remembered him mentioning that he had switched to being a swordsman after leaving the hero party, which shocked Logan even more. He found it unbelievable that Oren had made the switch, especially since he had just witnessed Oren perform flawlessly as a support mage. Logan recalled a misunderstanding he'd had that morning when he felt incredibly disappointed after reading the news about Oren being expelled from the hero party. It seemed Logan greatly admired Oren, and his expectations had been shattered upon learning this truth. Throughout the expedition, Logan had followed Oren's instructions because of his role. Logan also remarked that the way the first battle was handled, based on theory, had been incredibly boring for him. However, what changed Logan's perspective was the battle with the orcs. He noticed the orcs' movements suddenly became sluggish. This was the moment that reshaped his view of Oren. He couldn't believe a support magic existed that could reduce a target's abilities. Logan was still astonished that Oren could use a debuff spell. He explained that this spell was high-level magic, extremely difficult to cast, requiring a precise grasp of the target's magic resistance and exact adjustments to the magic formula. The craziest part was that even renowned mages like Selma struggled with such difficult magic. The fact that Oren could use it so effortlessly spoke volumes about his power. The only word Logan could think of to describe Oren was amazing. The first time they fought together, theoretically, was to assess each person's skills. Afterward, effective instructions were given based on each individual's differences and skills, allowing them to progress without any issues. Logan noted that despite only a slight difference in how Oren fought, it seemed his skills had grown by leaps and bounds. Logan clenched his fist, excited as he recognized the clear differences. Oren, as a support mage, had far surpassed his initial expectations. What Logan couldn't understand was why Oren had decided to switch to being a frontline attacker. Even so, the fact that Oren could defeat dozens of orcs in an instant proved he was still an outstanding frontline attacker. Sophia and the other team members all admired Oren and aspired to be like him. As Logan wondered how Oren could become such a skilled frontline attacker, he bowed his head and admitted that while many had called him a genius, a true genius could only be someone like Oren. Logan narrowed his eyes, determined not to give up. This only strengthened his resolve. He knew he had to succeed as an adventurer, no matter the cost, and to achieve that, he was willing to learn from Oren to become stronger. His teammates noticed the intense expression on Logan's face and called out to him, but he replied that he was just fired up for tomorrow's exploration. Meanwhile, at one of the restaurants affiliated with the Night Sky Silver Rabbit, Oren's team was trying to get to know him better. The team leader, Bernard, wanted everyone to drink heavily, but Oren tried to remind them that the expedition would continue tomorrow. Hanslim sided with Oren and reminded the others of their responsibility to guide the rookies. Realizing that Oren was as serious as Hanslim, Bernard agreed to drink only until midnight. Oren remarked that since Bernard's team members frequented these expensive restaurants, they must have great income privileges. Bernard said their salaries were actually just average compared to the heroes' party, because their job was basically a suicide mission. They wanted to at least enjoy some good food before facing danger. A member asked Oren if he used to live lavishly back when he was in the heroes' party. Oren explained that because he also handled administrative work, he didn't have much time to enjoy such amenities. Bernard curiously asked if Oren was still close with his former team members, and mentioned there seemed to be rumors that the heroes' party was facing some internal disagreements. The articles about this issue also bothered Oren. Normally, he wouldn't answer such questions, but this time he commented that everyone in the heroes' party had different hobbies and interests, so they usually enjoyed their free time separately and rarely ate together. Everyone was surprised to see Oren speaking so comfortably about his old team. They asked him about having been a support mage in the heroes' party, yet saying during their first meeting that he was a frontline attacker and also using magic in battle. Oren explained that he used magic to support the mages during their joint expeditions, but now he's a swordsman. They asked why he switched to being a swordsman after leaving his party. Oren recounted that he was originally a swordsman in the heroes' party and had earned that position through his own efforts. He deeply admired the role, which is why he thought this was the perfect opportunity to pursue his dream after leaving the party. They asked Oren why he was so passionate about swordsmanship since he was a child. Oren said it was because of his grandfather's influence. Once, when a monster attacked his village, his grandfather, a former adventurer, took it down with a single slash. That sight inspired Oren as a child. Another question was raised. If Oren loved swordsmanship so much, why did he agree to become a support mage for the heroes' party in the first place? Oren explained that as his party delved into the deeper floors of the dungeon, they realized the importance of having a support mage. This realization came from an assessment by one of the party members, and since Oren was versatile, the responsibility naturally fell to him. Thanks to his contributions, the party was able to reach the 94th floor of the dungeon, which is why Oren believed the role change was the right call at the time. However, he now admits that the switch was a mistake. Oren realized he was probably being too hard on himself. But the truth was, the heroes' party would never reach the 94th floor again without him. When asked what his ideal swordsman was, Oren replied that he admired those who could conquer the deepest floors of the dungeon all by themselves. Meanwhile, Sophia wondered if she should ask Oren to stay after the expedition ended. She admitted it would be sad if they had to part ways. The Silver Rabbit's guidance mission, requested by the Tengen clan, had begun, and Oren hoped everything would go smoothly. He overheard someone's conversation about a new expedition party heading deep into the dungeon, and Oren wondered if they were talking about the party he was thinking of. It seemed this dungeon had 92 floors, and his party could reach the 3rd floor today. Today's goal seemed to be confirming the new party's status. In the end, Oren realized he had to act first, never expecting that his old party, after abandoning him, could advance so quickly with new members. It felt like a slap in the face. First would be confirming their teamwork, which would be done on the lower, less risky floors. After overthinking the situation, Oren told himself not to worry about it anymore. 2 days ago, at the heroes' party's residence, they had recruited a new member named Philly Carpenter. In the presence of the Guardian, Derek, and the mage, Ansel, the leader of the heroes' party, Sword Saint Oliver, was also present. Oliver was an adventurer of outstanding ability and great renown. It seemed Philly was a support mage, and Oliver was very proud to add her to the team. Philly was quick to compare her ability to cast real buffs with the weak ones Oren used to create. Suddenly, the conversation shifted to the accounting ledger Oren had managed. Philly was surprised to see the amount of money spent on lavish food for her. Derek remarked that the amount of savings recorded in the ledger almost shocked him, and he called Oren a cheapskate for hiding such a large sum. According to Derek, money was meant to be spent. Oliver suddenly recalled that the financial management had previously been entrusted to Oren. Oliver always knew the amount of money coming in, but never the specific figures. Derek accused Oren of wanting to use their money without telling them, remarking that letting Oren manage the funds was a mistake and that Oliver was right to kick him out of the party. Philly, however, spoke up in Oren's defense, saying that he might have been saving the money for the party's activities. It seemed she was the only one thinking clearly. She listed a series of important expenses, including expeditions and the mansion's rent. Just then, Runa, the party's healer, burst into the room in a panic. She stopped short when she saw Philly in the room, cutting herself off mid-sentence. Oliver immediately realized, based on her panic, that the issue was likely related to Oren. She hadn't been informed that Oren had been kicked out of the party. Runa had only heard that the party was planning to oust Oren, a decision she had always opposed. That's why Oliver made the decision to kick him out while she was away. Oliver also secretly suspected that Runa had feelings for Oren. With an angry expression, Oliver told Runa to say whatever she wanted in front of Philly. Runa asked why Oren was participating in the Great Dungeon Expedition with the Silver Rabbits of the Night Sky, and how things had ended up like this. This made the usually calm Oliver flustered, breaking out in a sweat as he imagined his old friend joining a rival party. It had only been 3 days since Oren was kicked out. Oliver thought there was no way Oren had the guts or the skill to join such a famous party. The others shouted in outrage, unable to believe Oren thought he could operate as an S rank. Runa demanded they tell her what happened while she was gone. Oliver tried to calm her down, but Ansel suddenly blurted out that Oren had left the party. This left Runa stunned, and she assumed that Oren might have abandoned them. However, Derek quickly stepped in and corrected her, shouting that they were the ones who abandoned Oren by kicking him out. Runa's fury became palpable as she realized the decision had been made despite her objections. She declared that the party would fall into ruin because the only pillar holding them together was gone. Oliver still didn't understand why she valued Oren so much. Oliver told Runa that no matter how she felt, there was nothing they could do now. He declared that the party would conduct their trial on the 92nd floor of the dungeon. Runa vehemently protested, calling it a suicide mission and insisting they couldn't survive without Oren. This started to annoy Oliver. Runa demanded they hold the trial on easier floors. Runa even ignored the greeting from Philly, who had been chosen to replace Oren in the party, clearly furious as she stormed out of the room. Philly became sad, unable to get along with everyone. But it turned out she was just pretending, hiding other intentions. The next day during the trial, Oliver realized that Philly's buffs were disappearing too quickly. As soon as they vanished, the entire party's bodies felt heavy. He recalled that this had never happened with Oren. Back then, they could fight for hours without any trouble. Oliver guessed that Philly was probably underperforming because they had jumped to the 92nd floor so suddenly. He asked her to call out beasts attacking from their blind spots, since an enchanter should have a comprehensive view of the battlefield. However, Philly immediately refused, trembling as she said that just casting buffs was already too much for her, let alone acting as a guide. Oliver started to sweat as he realized the situation was becoming serious. He looked over at Ansel, who was casting his usual spells, but they seemed too weak to damage the monsters. He started cursing when he realized his own power had weakened as well, but no one seemed to understand why this was happening. Only Runa remained calm. Oliver asked her if she understood what was going on. Runa, annoyed by their ignorance, began to speak cryptically, making them even more frustrated. Runa was about to reveal the reason they had grown weaker, which was something quite obvious. However, before she could, a sound echoed from above. Oliver looked up, and the sight sent a chill down his spine. Black scales and enormous wings. The boss of the 92nd floor had appeared before them. The black dragon stared them down with murderous intent, as all hope seemed to drain from Oliver's body. They couldn't clear the 92nd floor without Orin. This truly was a suicide mission. The black dragon's scales made it impervious to both magical and physical attacks. Its powerful legs could crush any ferocious creature. Its roar was famous for freezing the souls of even the bravest adventurers in terror. Beating its wings to assert its dominance, it slowly advanced on Oliver's party. Meanwhile, Oliver wondered why the black dragon was even here. According to the lore of the Great Southern Labyrinth, bosses appeared every 10 floors up to the 90th floor. Although the floor bosses were powerful, they could only operate within a specific area. The black dragon was the boss of the 92nd floor, an enemy they had defeated when Orin was in the party. There was no time for idle thoughts. She yelled at Oliver, reminding him that in this situation, dealing with the black dragon was their top priority. They were currently outside the boss's territory. That's why Oliver was so shocked. The black dragon's landing alone created a shockwave so powerful that Oliver's entire party was thrown aside like flies. Eric was severely injured, and everyone started blaming Philly for not casting a protective spell in time. Meanwhile, Philly just stood there, looking as if she were frozen in fear. Oliver realized that terror had completely consumed her. He remembered that if it had been Orin, he would have buffed Derek without hesitation. Even in a tense situation like this, Oliver couldn't understand why a supposedly powerful mage like Philly would lose her composure so easily. Runa desperately begged Oliver to buy them some time so they could retreat, especially after she saw the fireball forming in the black dragon's mouth. Oliver realized that if they were pursued now, things would get much worse. With no other choice, he shook Philly hard to snap her back to reality and asked if she could still move. He ordered her to buff his strength, and he would try to deal some damage. Philly, though still terrified, followed Oliver's command. His stats increased significantly. With newfound confidence, Oliver felt he could handle this unexpected situation. He gripped his sword, confident he could overcome this challenge. Using his supernatural power, he unleashed a spell called Magic Convergence, causing his sword to glow with a brilliant yellow light. Runa explained that the magic used by humans and demonic creatures was very different, and Oliver's supernatural power was not something a human could possess. This power allowed him to converge and accumulate mana to its absolute maximum, creating unimaginable destructive force even though the spell looked simple. Oliver attempted to use Heaven/Covenant, hoping to deal massive damage to the enemy. In previous encounters, his slash had severed the black dragon's wing, disabling its flight and slowing it down. He thought it would be the same this time. If he cut off its wing, the dragon wouldn't be able to pursue them. But this time, his slash didn't even leave a scratch on the dragon's body. The black dragon whipped its tail, slamming Oliver, the most renowned adventurer, to the ground. The sight of their leader lying motionless, covered in injuries and dirt, sent the entire heroes' party into a state of shock. Oliver, usually so confident and resolute, now realized that his heavenly slash had no effect on this dragon. However, he refused to admit that they were being so utterly defeated. Runa called out to Oliver again, worriedly asking if he was okay. Normally, Oliver would have immediately come up with a series of strategies to turn the tide, but this time, his eyes were wide with fear. In a trembling voice, he turned to Runa in a fit of rage and asked, "What are we supposed to do now?" Runa reminded Oliver that as the leader, he needed to make the call. She urged him to pull himself together and suggested that, since they had no other choice, they should use the Caprica store. The Caprica store had the ability to connect the space of places they had previously visited with another, allowing for instantaneous travel, but only within the dungeon area. This meant the destination was random and would only be between boss areas. Runa also reminded him that after teleporting, they would have to face another floor's boss immediately, but at least it was better than confronting the Black Dragon. Oliver immediately agreed and declared he would use the Caprica store right away. He ordered the entire team to jump in the moment the space distorted. Oliver opened the gate, and just as the team was about to jump in, the Black Dragon whipped its tail, obstructing their movement. Oliver couldn't comprehend how the Black Dragon could be so powerful. Just as the dragon lunged at them, it was suddenly teleported through the gate. No one had expected that the Black Dragon could also use the Caprica store, and although their lives were saved, another team would now have to face this nightmare. Oliver's team would have to suffer the penalty for this. They ran outside to save the others, but Runa convinced them to recruit Oren again, as he was the reason for their precious strength. In the end, they were taken back to the Adventurers Guild for treatment and to discuss what had happened, hoping to find their next step in their challenging adventure. Meanwhile, Oren and his group had reached the 36th floor of the Southern Grand Labyrinth. He was thrilled to know that this was finally the last day of the expedition. The group had been very lucky to make it this far. Their goal for the day was to conquer floors 36 to 50, after which they would use the transfer crystal to return home. The journey seemed to be shortening, but it was unclear if they were truly excited about returning. That's when the group was called back to discuss a plan of action, and it was quickly decided that the leaders would handle the demonic beasts that the rookies couldn't defeat. As before, the boss battles would require the participation of the entire team. Teamwork makes the dream work, right? However, Oren felt a bad vibe from the labyrinth this morning, and his feelings were usually never wrong. Despite his track record, it was still too early to give up. Let's stay positive, folks. Besides, Oren was still unsure if the bad feeling he had was due to Logan's strange expression or the bizarre labyrinth itself. However, deciding it didn't matter at the moment, he turned to Caroline, who was also in Team 10, intending to offer some advice about playing more defensively. Oren thought Caroline needed to be more cautious and move more skillfully when dealing with monsters. He thought that if Caroline focused solely on drawing the monster's attention, she could help her teammates more. However, Caroline disagreed with his advice, as she didn't want to make her teammates work harder because of her. She wanted to hold the vanguard position and fight, determined to set aside all thoughts of cooperation to focus on the labyrinth. This was also when Oren mentioned Albert, the ace of the silver rabbits of the night sky, who seemed very important to Caroline but had lost his life in the battle against the Black Dragon. The entire clan's strength had significantly diminished after Albert's death, as Selma had once mentioned. Oren's mention of Albert could have made Caroline fearful of an unknown fate, but instead she became even more determined. Knowing that Albert, the clan's ace, had sacrificed himself to protect his comrades, Caroline truly believed that Albert had to die to keep his legacy and the clans alive. Oren realized his words would have no effect on her after hearing that speech, so he decided to give up and said that he was counting on her, which made Caroline smile. Just then, Sophia interrupted and asked Oren to give her specific advice on how she could become stronger. Oren understood that he had to answer within reasonable limits without hurting her or discouraging her, so he asked her to explain sorcery. Sophia quickly began to explain that sorcery is based on using the magic available in the air, and the ability to trigger various phenomena is called magic, something only hexen monsters can use. In contrast, sorcery is a technology based on magic, because it can generate magical power through formulas. Humans, who are inherently unable to use magic, can now use it thanks to this special magical phenomenon. Oren was impressed with Sophia's knowledge. However, he still wondered if asking her to explain the magical process in more detail might confuse her. He decided to ask more about the process of magic, but Sophia held her ground and answered so perfectly that there was no doubt left in Oren's mind that this girl was incredibly smart. Oren praised her intelligence and promised to teach her the necessary skills to elevate her abilities, as well as the required techniques. This made Sophia overjoyed and grateful. They continued their journey to the 40th floor of the labyrinth. While continuing their conversation about parallel construction, Oren explained that it was the art of building two or more formulas at the same time. He emphasized that this skill was indispensable for advanced mages. Sophia was a bit flustered because this sounded too difficult for her. But Oren reassured her that anyone could execute two or more formulas simultaneously once they got used to it. Of course, he also mentioned that Logan used to do it quite easily. Furthermore, some people could build dozens of formulas at once, which made Sophia's mind reel. She couldn't understand why parallel construction was so important. This was when Oren began to explain the 4 levels of attack magic: elementary, intermediate, advanced, and special. He reckoned that if she could use special grade magic, then becoming an advanced mage would be sufficient. Oren added more about the lower floors, where there were beasts that couldn't be defeated with a single attack, and how parallel magic could help in such desperate situations. Hearing this, Sophia completely understood the appeal of this type of magic, and she promised to give her all to master it, making her new teacher proud. Of course, Oren still thought she should seek out some veteran members of the clan or even Selma to learn from. But it was clear Sophia only wanted Oren to be the one to teach her these lessons. Still, it was obvious that she felt this would be a bit difficult for him. Oren agreed to teach Sophia, as long as Selma allowed it, since he was practically a stranger. However, Sophia clearly had a special liking for Oren, so asking Selma probably wouldn't hurt. A few minutes later, they arrived at the boss area, where Oren would demonstrate his abilities. They teamed up with Selma on this floor, and she ordered them to move according to their roles. The team leaders asked Oren to take the lead, and he seemed pleased with that. He promised to do his best to keep everyone focused on the battle and said he only needed 2 minutes, which made the leaders laugh at his optimism. Oren told Sophia to hide, and she watched from a distance as the leaders fought. This was surely the first time she had seen a battle like this, completely different from the way of fighting she had known. She watched as the 2 defenders attacked and drew the giant monster's attention, while Oren struck from its blind spot as they focused on the creature's lower body. Selma and Cassie were also a formidable force, attacking the monster's upper body with magic, and it was clear this team wasn't here to waste time, despite it being their first time working together. Sophia truly wished she could become like them. When the battle finally ended and the team thanked Oren for his excellent support, Oren suddenly noticed his power had increased significantly. His combat ability, equipment durability, and magic power had all increased 100-fold. Together, they cut away the monster's defenses, leaving only its shell to be broken. Everyone waited until Selma gave the signal, and when she said now, the whole team charged into attack. Finally, they defeated the boss monster in the blink of an eye, officially conquering the 50th floor. The atmosphere in the group was filled with joy after this resounding victory, and it seemed like everything would end smoothly. However, they had started celebrating too soon, as a giant black dragon appeared and crashed their party. At that moment, Oren's fears became a reality in the worst possible way as he stood beside Sophia, facing the terrifying threat. The black dragon stood before them like a horrifying monster. This dragon shouldn't have appeared on this level. It was a tyrant from the deeper floors of the labyrinth, slaughtering adventurers with its deadly black flames. The entire group was stunned by the monster's appearance, but they couldn't understand how it had shown up here. Paralyzing fear spread through them, and Selma realized they would all die if they didn't act immediately. However, Oren reacted faster than she did. He immediately ordered the leaders to protect the rookies at all costs. The experience he just had gave Oren an extra boost of motivation, and this inspired Selma to rally the group to hold their ground. They erected magical barriers in front of the defensive warriors and quickly got into a defensive formation, shielding against the black dragon's attacks. The pressure on them was immense, as the entire group was relying on their protection. When the dragon spat out a fireball, everyone knew they could die in an instant. However, Oren's quick thinking enhanced the effectiveness of the magical barriers, allowing everyone to survive the attack. Oren was overjoyed to see everyone was still alive, but he was still baffled as to why a black dragon was in a mid-level area when it should have been on floor 94 or higher. Clearly, something was very wrong. Who could be behind this? Or had the system been completely thrown into chaos? But for now, they had to put those questions aside. Oren knew he had to figure out a way to get through this and survive. The path to level 51 was ready, and they were standing at the transmigration crystal after having defeated this level's boss. This gave him an idea, realizing they could escape if they could reach the crystal. However, he was the only one who could still move well, which meant that if he wanted to survive, he would have to leave the group behind. But since demonic monsters are often drawn to places with many people, Oren knew the black dragon would soon head for his group. That meant he had no choice but to fight the dragon because he didn't want to be the only one to survive. His mission now was to lead all the new adventurers to level 51, so he decided to fight. Immediately, Oren charged the black dragon and threw a secondary sword at its eye, then used his temporary boost skill to attack from the air. Selma watched, looking for any sign that the dragon was about to go down. But she was disappointed to see it return without a single scratch. This made Oren realize that the monster couldn't be beaten this way. Oren asked the leaders to protect the rookies while he confronted the black dragon. He was confident he had a chance to win, so he drew the dragon's attention, making it focus on him. As the monster focused its attention on Oren, he used a reflective shield to turn the dragon's attack back on itself, leaving the entire crowd gawking in astonishment, as they had no idea this kind of magic even existed. Furthermore, Oren enhanced all of his skills, simultaneously activating all types of basic support magic and parallel magic, a technique that was incredibly difficult to perform. This made Selma wonder whether she should support him or not. But when the barrier disappeared due to the weak magic, Selma was stunned to see Oren still maintaining his magic, and even enhancing it multiple times, something she had never heard of before. This frightened her, as she couldn't guess what Oren's current combat power was. In the blink of an eye, Oren rushed toward the dragon, leaving the party members in awe. His physical abilities had increased unimaginably, astonishing everyone with his strength and capabilities in this battle. However, this magic also had a drawback. It didn't affect anyone other than Oren, and could only be used in short-term battles. Due to having to construct up to 30 techniques in parallel, the magical burden Oren was shouldering was immense, and it was clearly exhausting him. He finally realized that he needed to end this fight quickly if he didn't want to die. Oren didn't remember exactly when it happened, but when he and Oliver were just 2 kids, they had the misfortune of discovering their entire town had been murdered by thieves while they were out training. Their first reaction was to cry until they decided they would become so strong that they would never let anyone take anything important from them again. No matter the circumstances, they had promised to be strong enough to protect what was important to them. Oren recalled this promise while facing the black dragon, and he realized that the world back then was cruel, but it was that very event that led him to become an adventurer and seek his own strength and knowledge. Oren knew he had to cast aside all his limits to protect everyone, and that was the only thing he was focused on right now. He told himself it wasn't difficult, because all he had to do was defeat the enemy in front of him. Selma couldn't believe that Oren actually wanted to deal with the black dragon alone, but she also knew that constructing the formula to enhance his skills had taken a tremendous amount of effort from him. All she could do was protect the rookies and let Oren focus on the battle, because the pressure was clearly weighing heavily on him. Suddenly, the dragon began to attack while Oren was in mid-air and unprotected. It was a surprise attack, but Oren was one step ahead. He quickly used his magic to create a foothold in the air and descended to the ground with the dragon beneath his feet. The entire team couldn't believe their eyes as they witnessed this extraordinary display. Selma realized that Oren's special ability could only be used by people like him and Oliver, as it was their way of gathering magic and materializing it. Oliver often used it as a powerful attack method, and it was inherently a very fascinating supernatural ability. Oren had just unleashed his magical power, allowing him to move through the air and overpower the black dragon. He continued to enhance his sharpness and durability, leaving more scars on the dragon's tough scales, while the crowd cheered him on. Just then, someone noticed a strange expression on Oren's face, and immediately after, a massive explosion occurred, blinding everyone for a moment. When the smoke cleared, Sophia was relieved to see that Oren had dodged the dragon's attack, but it seemed things were about to get more complicated. The black dragon was still standing and had clearly transformed the mist into some kind of weapon. No one had ever heard of such an attack before. Oren also understood the dragon's trick. It was drawing magic from its surroundings and using a skill called the convergence of forces. The black dragon's main attack could be a swift strike with a fireball or its tail. But that wasn't all. The real threat to Oren was the purple mist, which sometimes changed shape like a whip and other times like a spear, allowing it to attack from all directions. Oren realized that the black dragon still wasn't fighting seriously, which made him furious. It was time for him to use his own fireball, while quickly closing in on the dragon, dodging the dangerous mist. However, the dragon suddenly increased its attack speed, making it difficult for Oren to evade. He immediately erected an earth wall between them, realizing he needed to keep a safe distance from it. Just a few minutes later, Oren's confidence began to waver as he realized his earth wall was having no effect. The entire team also knew that this was an incredibly tough battle, and Selma was also worried because the dragon had yet to unleash its decisive blow. Meanwhile, Oren recalled the last time he fought this dragon with the hero's party, when Derek and Runa had dealt with the mist, while Oliver and Neri handled the firepower. He realized it wasn't firepower that took down the dragon, which made him wonder if he could do the same, since he was the only one who could face it. Oren reminded himself of the promise he'd sworn as a child, affirming that he needed to believe in himself to defeat the black dragon. Selma was also trying to decipher the fight, as she understood that the dragon's attacks were nearly impossible to defend against. Oren pushed the black dragon away, protecting everyone from its attacks, a truly heroic act. He dodged every attack with agility, like a specialized evasion tank, leaving Selma deeply impressed. She never thought someone could pull off moves like that while facing the black dragon. Oren decided to keep dodging even without Derek by his side this time. And it was clear he didn't need a healer like Runa either, as long as he wasn't hit by his opponent. As he ran towards the dragon, he thought of Oliver, Neri, and his old friends from the hero party, finally attacking the dragon without dealing much damage to it. Of course, Oren didn't intend to deal damage right away. He just wanted to get the monster's attention. He set up a series of spells around himself and asked the black dragon if it had ever seen so much magic before. As he decided to strike it with multiple spells at once, the magical attacks didn't do much damage as expected, but Oren was ready with his next move. He began the magic amplification chain, and Selma realized his magical attacks were being enhanced. Selma understood that the amplification chain was when magical attacks passed through places where spells had been set, absorbing the surrounding magical power and making the attack stronger. This was also one of the unique spells Oren had created, combined with his magic convergence ability. Meanwhile, Oren decided to push through the dragon's attack, and his sword changed color, turning a jet black that was different from Oliver's golden sword. Oren held the sword like a true hero, ready to face the beast once more. All the members of the clan were watching him, and it was clear to them that Oren was taking on the role of the entire former hero party. No one could doubt that he wouldn't give up until the black dragon was completely defeated. With a powerful slash, Oren believed the impact with the dragon would significantly reduce its mobility. However, what really made Oren wonder was how the dragon could have recognized the target of this attack. Oren realized the black dragon had been hit by Oliver's heavenly flash before appearing on this floor, which explained why it could defend so well. This time, the dragon had protected its majestic wings and tail. Orin quickly regained his composure, despite being surrounded by mist, the dragon's familiar attack. He knew this was no longer a playful bout. The battle had gotten truly serious. Orin created magic convergence once again, realizing he didn't have much time left as his magical supports were fading. Selma, seeing Orin in a difficult situation, tried to assist him with the support magic. But Orin, with the pride of a powerful mage, refused the help. He didn't want any other magic interfering with his magic convergence. He told Selma and everyone else to focus on protecting themselves instead of paying attention to him. Selma, seeing Orin's determination, accepted and decided to let him handle the dragon. She could only cheer him on and hope that the team members would protect themselves well and that everything would be okay. The team couldn't see clearly from where they stood, but it was obvious Orin was still fighting fiercely. He definitely wasn't backing down easily. One member couldn't believe they were witnessing such a battle until Sophia reassured them that there was no need to worry about Orin. He was truly exceptional. And besides, he had become their hero. The black dragon remained powerful until Orin brought it down with a wound he'd inflicted, suggesting the beast's condition might not be perfect at the moment. However, the black dragon still had its mist, which it used again to make its opponent let their guard down. It was hard to believe the beast still had so much power left. This was when Orin decided to use magic sword creation, making the whole team think a black mass was appearing from beneath his feet. He attacked with the magic sword. The entire team began to feel an uncomfortable pressure. It seemed to everyone that there was no end in sight for this battle. But before hope could fade, Selma noticed the black sword in his hand, and this made the whole team pay attention to it too. No one could believe this sword was created right here in the labyrinth, and they could sense that the atmosphere around it was completely different from the swords Orin had used before. It seemed as if magic had condensed around the sword, and it was revealed to be a mass-type weapon that combined support magic and magic convergence to create improvised weapons by hardening the ground around it. It was clear to everyone that Orin's power far surpassed even special-grade magic. However, Selma's train of thought was interrupted by another attack from the black dragon. Orin knew the black dragon's attack was truly terrifying, but he didn't think he could drag this out any longer. That's why he decided to get more serious. He once again used Reflective Barrier and jumped to dodge the beast's attack while using the barrier to launch himself at his opponent from above, combining it with the spell's self-weight increase to plummet down onto the dragon while screaming at the top of his lungs. He poured every last bit of his energy into that attack. At first, Selma was terrified by the assault. She wondered, was Orin okay? Had the black dragon been defeated? She slowly opened her eyes and saw the body of the black dragon lying on the ground. Orin, his black sword still in hand and his face etched with exhaustion, looked back at his party, feeling the strong bond and affection between them. They had won, but the cost had been immense, and the next steps of their journey remained uncertain. Sophia immediately cried out, and the whole group quickly gathered around to make sure he wasn't seriously injured. At the Adventurers Guild, not long before Orin's confrontation with the Black Dragon, it was the final day of their mission, and an emergency had arisen. Runa ran inside to tell the staff to call the guild leaders, as their problem was extremely time-sensitive. She explained that they were a hero party called the Golden Dawn. This was the party's official name, decided by Oliver about 9 years ago. Runa explained that a monster that shouldn't have been on this floor had appeared, and that their party was now heavily injured. Eleonora, a staff member at the guild, immediately understood the gravity of the situation and agreed to call the guild leaders for support, asking them to come to the meeting room right away. In the meantime, the other members tried to maintain contact with their party leader. A few minutes later, they were sitting comfortably in the meeting room with the guild master, Leon. The hero party apologized for bothering Leon and his executives, but they were here to ask for an urgent favor, which confused the guild leader. He asked Runa what the emergency was. Runa began to explain that they needed to get every adventurer in the Great Labyrinth to return through the teleportation gate. Runa, though exhausted and stressed, felt a sense of relief knowing her request had been partially accepted. She thought to herself that if Oren were here, things might have gone more smoothly. But she remained determined to complete her mission of protecting the adventurers in the labyrinth. At that point, Leon spoke up, saying he needed a valid reason to act on their request. Since a mass teleportation was a spell that involved many people, Runa knew this was a bit sudden, which was why she decided to briefly tell the executives their story. She revealed that the reason for requesting an evacuation at this time was because they had just faced the colossal Black Dragon. Runa went on to explain to Leon and the guild leaders that the situation was extremely critical, as the Black Dragon wasn't just any monster, but one of the most dangerous creatures ever encountered in the labyrinth. The fact that it had moved from the 92nd floor to an upper floor broke all the rules and could cause immense damage to other adventurer parties if they didn't leave quickly through the teleportation gate. Leon, though still a bit confused, took on a more serious expression when he heard the words, Black Dragon. He asked for confirmation that they were talking about the monster from the 92nd floor, something that had never happened before. Runa nodded and further explained that it was Oren, a former member of their hero party, who had to face the dragon in a fierce battle. And although Oren and his party were victorious, the dragon's sudden appearance indicated that something unusual was happening within the labyrinth. Some members of the leadership questioned the validity of the information Runa provided, but Leon reminded them that there was no time for doubt. He pointed out that if her story was true, failing to act in time could lead to disastrous consequences. After a few minutes of discussion, the council voted unanimously in favor of Runa's request, agreeing to deploy the emergency teleportation spell to ensure the safety of all adventurers. Leon thought for a moment before agreeing that the situation was an emergency that might require swift action. He asked Runa to provide every detail about the encounter with the Black Dragon so they could more accurately assess the threat level. Leon recognized the severity of the situation and decided to immediately hold an emergency meeting with the key members of the guild. He announced that they needed to vote on Runa's request, while also encouraging the other leaders to raise any questions or doubts for discussion. Runa knew that the truth of this information was still unclear to everyone in the Adventurers Guild, but she wasn't sure how much they would trust her. Nevertheless, she was ready to face the challenges ahead. Runa felt relieved to see her request approved. However, she was still worried about confronting the Black Dragon, a threat that even the strongest warriors feared. She hoped the withdrawal plan would go smoothly and that they would soon find a way to deal with this terrifying monster. She was certain that it was Oren who had given them the strength to convince the council. The entire party had adapted better thanks to his influence. Runa then asked Leon for help with another request related to the teleportation process, asking if it was possible to move those from floors 45 to 50 to the plaza near the Great Labyrinth. They wanted to join Oren, who was scouting that area. Fortunately, Leon had no objection to this request either, and proceeded with the teleportation procedure. He ordered his executive members to charge their magic in preparation for the process, while Runa prayed that Oren could support them with his magical power. She truly wanted Oren to tell them what had happened, so the party members could apologize and everything could go back to the way it was. Once the teleportation was complete, Leon told the hero party that it was now time for them to confront and eliminate the Black Dragon. While they stayed behind to assist the adventurers who were disoriented by the sudden teleportation, everyone hoped to achieve victory together on this mission. Before Runa could convince her party to go find Oren, Derek suddenly interrupted her. He argued that they didn't need a weakling like Oren. It seemed that on the way to the Adventurers Guild, Derek had spoken with everyone, and it was clear he didn't believe in the magic Runa had mentioned. Anoli also supported Derek's opinion, believing they had only failed because the Black Dragon had launched a surprise attack. Runa couldn't believe her teammates were still complaining in a situation like this. It was as if they were completely blind to reality. She decided to teach them one last reality check by reminding them that their party was currently the weakest among the S-rank parties, and it was obvious a party like theirs could never defeat the Black Dragon. Eric still refused to listen, overly confident in his party's strength, which led Runa to insult him for the first time. She said that they had only achieved everything thanks to Oren's support. Derek and Anelli would only be A rank without Oren's help, so it was perfectly reasonable for Runa to put them in their place. Derek was enraged by Runa's comment, so he challenged her by charging straight at her with his sword. Runa said she could easily beat him in a one-on-one fight. But before Derek's sword could touch her, he found himself unable to move. While Runa looked at him with eyes full of disappointment, the conflict seemed about to escalate until Oliver stepped in, telling them both to stop. Oliver wanted his party to find Oren first, because only when he was present could they decide on their next move. Derek didn't have the courage to argue, so he agreed. While Runa felt slightly irritated that Oliver had spoken up so late, a few minutes later, they arrived at the entrance of the Great South Maze. They discovered the Black Dragon's corpse, which came as a huge shock. Their first thought was that something was wrong because there were too many people around. They decided not to let their guard down as they approached the Black Dragon. The crowd quickly made way for them after recognizing the hero's party, but no one looked happy. After confirming that the dragon was indeed dead, they saw Oren, who was holding his sword a short distance away. Oren immediately said that they had arrived just in time. Runa thought that perhaps the Silver Rabbit of the Night Sky clan had defeated the dragon, until she saw that Oren was the only one who was seriously injured. Oren looked too exhausted to talk and turned to leave after handing Runa something to take care of. Runa was stunned to learn that Oren had defeated the Black Dragon when her party couldn't even fight it. This made Oliver a little angry, and he stepped in front of Oren with a cold, deathly glare. However, Oliver let him go without saying a word. That evening, Sophia sat writing about the day in her diary. It had been an amazing day for her. She believed Oren was out of her league, as he had saved her once again, making her daydream about how he always maintained such a kind face. Oren had become the most amazing person she knew, and it made her blush. Later, Selma returned home with her hair in a mess, clearly too exhausted to stand properly. She immediately collapsed onto her bed to sleep, without even bothering to bathe. So, Sophia suggested the two sisters take a bath together. While soaking in the tub, Sophia was happy to see her sister Selma finally starting to look better. However, something was clearly bothering Selma, and she asked her younger sister for her thoughts regarding the battle between Oren and the Black Dragon. Since most of the rookies didn't fully understand, Selma was curious to know what Sophia had noticed from this particular fight. Sophia began to recount to her sister that the way Oren fought and moved was completely inhuman, and he even used spells she had never seen before. Other than that, she thought it was just a basic fight. She further explained that the basic behaviors and skills for each role that she'd been taught were all applied by Oren, which made Selma realize that one person had truly taken on the actions of an entire party. Sophia had decided she wanted to be as cool as Oren. Selma recalled the battle, where she had clearly witnessed superhuman strength from Oren, making her feel like she was in a world beyond her comprehension. However, Sophia only understood what she saw in her own way, based on the knowledge she had learned. She also hoped to one day become an adventurer strong enough to stand on par with Oren, but she wasn't sure if that day would ever come. The goal felt so distant that it made her a little sad, and she immediately hugged her sister tightly. Sophia greatly admired her older sister, who had shown her a different path from the one their parents had planned. They always took care of each other, which made Sophia promise that her sister could always count on her whenever she was capable enough to help. At this point, Selma asked her younger sister if she could sleep in the same bed with her. After a long time, Selma was grateful when Sophia agreed, and it seemed the sisters' bonding time was going wonderfully. The next morning, Oren was still in bed, groaning from the muscle aches caused by the previous day's battle. Although he felt lucky to have no long-term effects from his poor spell casting, he still wondered if it had been a magical misfire. He had returned home alone after leaving the labyrinth, and though he felt guilty about the people in the clan, he was curious about what happened after he left. However, he thought it would be a bit rude to suddenly show up there, so he decided not to act immediately. He decided he would go to the Adventurers Guild to find out more about what transpired after he left. Before long, he was sitting in a meeting room with Leon, the hero party, and other executives. As it seemed, they also wanted to know what had happened in the labyrinth. He revealed that he had only fought the Black Dragon, which made Leon turn to Runa, who informed everyone that the matter of the Black Dragon's corpse had been quickly resolved with the guild's help. After that, all eyes turned back to Oren, the true hero of the day. Leon asked if Oren had killed the Black Dragon by himself, as Selma had told him. But the hero was silent for a moment. He truly couldn't believe everyone could be this foolish. But he finally replied that he had indeed defeated the monster without any help. Furthermore, Oren talked about the new attack patterns he had learned during the fight and compared it to the previous battle. Before he could say more, Derek suddenly cut in, claiming that Oren only got lucky and managed to defeat the monster because it had already been weakened by Oliver and Anelli's attacks. Oren immediately told him to shut up, which only made Derek even angrier. Oren clearly didn't care about Derek's stupid remarks, and he turned to Oliver and asked why he would risk going into the labyrinth so early with a newly hired enchanter. He argued that his old friend had made a reckless and arrogant decision. Surprisingly, Oliver admitted that Oren was right, which prompted Oren to point out that their party had nearly died countless times because of this kind of decision when they used to venture deep into the labyrinth together. This comment made Oliver shout that that was exactly why he had replaced their enchanter. Oren replied that he wasn't angry about being kicked off the team, but what infuriated him was their lack of respect for support mages. Oren truly believed that Oliver and his team expected new recruits to perform at his level from the very beginning, even though it took a great deal of grit for a mage to explore the labyrinth. Oren was furious with Oliver for his unrealistic expectations, as he couldn't understand why a party would fall apart over this when even a B-rank group knew these critical factors. On top of that, Oliver simply gave orders from a safe distance. But it was clear his old friend wasn't interested in understanding any of it. Oliver believed that anyone who knew how to use support magic could do the job, and he was too stubborn on the matter. This led Oren to list the flaws in their party, as he reminded them that it was time they started being more careful with their actions, especially during this conversation. Oren was also quick to remind them how a support mage can typically cast an average of 3 buffs for a single teammate in one battle. Furthermore, the timing for activating the spells isn't always the same. The air grew more tense. He proposed that he would keep track of all the buff durations, refresh the buffs, and ensure the team had the right kind of spells for every situation. Moreover, Oliver would have to act as the command center, allowing him to give directions to the entire party. However, it seemed Oliver wasn't entirely on board with this idea. Despite that, Oren pushed on and asked if his former teammates were willing to cooperate to make this happen.